She
I am
refused to
sick of
shake
your
a black
constant disruptions.
CEO's hand by
You are
Dawn
finished in this
$2.
company.
40 cents B had
These are the
disappeared. Hello
non-negotiable terms.
everyone,
If
before
you
we
cannot meet
begin
them,
today's
we will be
video,
forced to dissolve the
I need
partnership
your help.
immediately.
We've
I told
noticed
you this
that the
wouldn't stand.
channel
You
is
forged
losing
these reports.
traction, and
That was a
subscribing is
baseless
one of the
accusation.
best
We
ways you
followed
can help
protocol.
us.
What is the meaning of this?
It's
You can't just
quick,
cut us off.
free,
The
and
decision has
allows
been
us
made.
to
The override is
continue
active.
bringing
I
you
can't access
great
anything. The system is
content.
locked down.
Your
Gentlemen,
support
this is a
means
disaster.
everything.
The auditors found the
Let's
discrepancy,
keep this
and they're
channel
recommending
growing
immediate legal
collectively.
action.
Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. The boardroom froze the moment the words left her mouth. You don't deserve a handshake. Alyssa Ward didn't whisper it. She delivered it like a verdict, chin lifted, palm held up as if stopping traffic. The fluorescent lights washed the room in a cold corporate blue, but the heat of her contempt was unmistakable. Across the table, Naomi Carter extended her hand, steady, calm, unshaken. Her beige suit, clean lines, quiet confidence, all of it collided violently with the wall of arrogance in front of her. 5 men in navy suits sat behind Alyssa, arms crossed, waiting for a spectacle. One smirked. Another leaned back as if settling in for entertainment. Someone clicked a pen, twice sharp, deliberate, disrespectful. And the air cracked. Alyssa's voice cut through the room like a steel edge. People like you don't open negotiations at this level. Naomi didn't blink, didn't pull her hand back. The silence around her thickened, stretching like an invisible wire ready to snap. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Naomi. She slowly lowered her hand the way someone might lower a flag after a fallen soldier, respectful, deliberate, full of meaning only she understood. Then she looked around the table, absorbing every expression: amusement, dismissal, entitlement. A gallery of men who had already decided she was beneath the table they were sitting at. Alyssa straightened her blazer. Let's proceed with someone qualified, shall we? A ripple of restrained laughter flickered through the room. Naomi opened her leather portfolio with the calm of someone who'd survived worse storms than petty insults. Her pen glided across the page. No rush, no flinch, and that composure, quiet-centered, made Alyssa's confidence waver for the first time. Somewhere near the end of the table, a younger analyst, Daniel, watched Naomi more carefully. Her posture wasn't submissive. It was measured, powerful in its restraint. He glanced at the documents in front of her and caught a glimpse of a familiar seal and executive authorization most board members never touch. His breath caught. Alyssa didn't notice. She was too busy owning the moment she thought she controlled. Next time, she said, turning her shoulder, know your place before you walk into our boardroom. Naomi finally lifted her eyes, and something in the room shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but inevitability has a way of announcing itself without sound. Alyssa felt it too. A pressure, a presence. The sense that she had just crossed a line she didn't even know existed. Naomi closed her portfolio, hands steady. Is that? So she said softly. 5 words. But they landed like the opening crack of a seismic fault, silent now, catastrophic later. The room didn't know it yet, but by dawn, $2.4 billion would be gone. And this moment, this refusal, this arrogance would be the match that lit the entire empire on fire. The boardroom didn't breathe. Not the men in navy suits. Not the glass walls that seemed to tighten around the table. Not even Alyssa, who suddenly looked like she'd touched something electric without meaning to. Naomi slid her pen into the crease of her notebook. No rush. No tremor. Just movement with purpose, like someone who'd already decided the outcome long before the meeting began. Alyssa broke the silence first. Let's move on, she said sharply. We don't have time to waste. Naomi lifted her eyes, slow and deliberate. You're right, she said. We don't. The men behind Alyssa shifted uncomfortably. Something about Naomi's tone didn't match the woman Alyssa thought she was humiliating. Something about it sounded final. Alyssa clicked the remote to advance the presentation. Nothing happened. She clicked again. Still nothing. Mark fixed the screen. She snapped at one of the men, but Mark was staring at his laptop. Hard. Arr. His pupils shrank. His throat tightened. He tapped the keys twice faster, then again with rising panic. He whispered. I think we have a system issue. What issue? She barked. Mark turned the laptop around. The room went still. A red banner stretched across the dashboard, a CCESSREVOKED, a CCOUNTLO, CKDOWNEXACUTIVEOVARIDSALSR. Whose override is that? Daniel, the young analyst, swallowed hard. He knew exactly whose override that was. He'd seen that seal before on only 3 documents in the entire corporation. Before he could speak, Naomi tapped her earpiece, barely a motion, barely a sound. Maya, she murmured, continue. Her assistant's voice came through crisp enough for the nearest 3 people to hear. Phase 1, completed. All investment channels frozen. Awaiting confirmation for Phase 2. Alyssa's eyes widened. You're on a call during my meeting. Naomi looked at her as if the question didn't make sense. This is not your meeting. For the first time, Alyssa stepped back, not physically, but in the way her confidence cracked around the edges. She glanced at the men behind her, searching for support. But their screens were flashing red, too. One of them finally spoke. Alyssa, she has executive override authority. Level 1, 1. How? How is that possible? Alyssa's jaw tightened. She doesn't. She can't. Daniel closed his laptop gently, like someone handling a live grenade. She can, he said quietly. Only controlling partners have level 1 authority. A silence slammed into the room. Alyssa stared at Naomi. You're bluffing. Naomi didn't answer. She didn't need to. Maya's voice filled the speaker again. Naomi, your request to reroute the 2.4 portfolio is ready. Say the word. 2.4 billion. The number hit the men in suits like a punch to the chest. Alyssa stumbled through her next breath. You don't have the right? Naomi leaned forward, voice low, steady, surgical. You refuse to shake my hand. And now you want to dictate my rights. The room shook, not physically, but morally. The imbalance of power flipped in a single heartbeat. Naomi stood. The chair didn't scrape. It whispered. Everyone felt it. Let's continue, she said. And for the first time, no one doubted who the meeting actually belonged to. The temperature in the room seemed to shift slightly, but unmistakably. Alyssa felt it first. A subtle drop in authority, like someone had quietly pulled the chair out from under her without touching it. She forced a laugh. Too sharp. Okay, enough theatrics, she said, waving her hand through the air. We all know you don't control that portfolio. Naomi didn't even look in her direction. She was watching Daniel. The young analyst straightened, instinctively caught by the quiet weight of her gaze. Not intimidation. Recognition. Respect. A kind of acknowledgement Alyssa had never offered him in 3 years of working under her. Daniel, Naomi said softly, read the authorization at the bottom of page 3. Alyssa jolted. No. Do not read anything, but Daniel had already flipped the page. His voice trembled just barely, but the words were clear. Executive controlling partner Dr. Naomi Carter. The men in suits stiffened. One dropped his pen. Another leaned forward like he needed to reread the air. Alyssa's face went blank. Not pale. Not red. Just empty, as if her system had short-circuited. That's not possible, she whispered. Naomi folded her hands. It was possible the moment we acquired your division last year, Mark muttered. She's the owner, she's literally the owner. Alyssa spun toward him. Mark, shut up. But the room wasn't listening to Alyssa anymore. It was listening to Naomi. She tapped her earpiece again, calm, precise. Maya. Proceed to Phase 2. Maya's reply came instantly, Phase 2 engaged. All liquidity routes redirected. All partner authorizations revoked except yours. Full report generated. The men absorbed the blow like a slow-motion car crash. Alyssa tried to steady herself by gripping the back of a chair. You can't just freeze a multi-billion-dollar portfolio without board approval. Naomi tilted her head, not taunting, just clarifying a fact. I don't need board approval. I am the board. The words detonated without raising her voice. Daniel exhaled shakily. He looked at Naomi the way people look at a sunrise they never expected, quiet awe mixing with disbelief. Alyssa shook her head, backing away from the conference table. This is a hostile move. This is sabotage. Your Naomi cut in her voice, gentle but lethal. You're calling me hostile minutes after you dismissed, insulted, and humiliated the woman signing your paychecks. Alyssa froze. The truth finally found her. And it didn't hit her in the chest. It hit her in the mirror. No one spoke. No one moved. Until Naomi closed her notebook with a soft thud. A sound so small, yet it echoed like a gavel. Let me be clear, she said. You didn't lose control today. You gave it away one insult at a time. Alyssa's breath trembled. I didn't know who you were. Naomi stepped forward, her shadow stretching across the polished table. That's the problem, she said. You thought you did. And for the first time since the meeting began, Alyssa realized this wasn't a negotiation. It was a reckoning. Alyssa steadied herself against the edge of the table as if the polished wood could hold her world together. It couldn't. Not anymore. The men behind her kept refreshing their screens, each update worse than the last authorization, denied access, revoked assets, rerouted. All of it happening in real time, and all of it controlled by the woman they'd dismissed the moment she walked through the door. Daniel's laptop chimed again. A new notification. His eyes widened. Alyssa, he said carefully, your travel card just deactivated. Alyssa's head snapped up. What? And your executive entry badge, Mark added, staring at his screen. It's red. That's impossible, she snapped. The system must be glitching, but even she didn't believe that. Naomi, still standing, still centered, didn't spare her a glance.
She was looking at the men.
You've all been operating under the assumption that your roles were secured by status, she said. But status without integrity is nothing more than borrowed power. Her voice was soft, too soft for how it landed. The room didn't dare breathe. Then the door opened. A young intern stepped inside, a woman barely in her mid-20s, clutching a tablet with both hands. Her badge read Lena Ortiz. She froze the moment she saw the tension, as if she had walked into the eye of a storm. Alyssa hissed, Not now, Lena. Get out. But Naomi spoke first.
Stay.
Lena looked between them, one voice barking, one steady. She gravitated toward the stillness. Naomi nodded gently. What did you come to say? Lena swallowed, then stepped forward. I ran the morning audit like you requested, Ms. Carter. The entire room tilted. Alyssa's voice cracked, Ms. What Lena held out the tablet to Naomi. I noticed discrepancies in the division's reporting over the last 5 months. Patterns that match. She hesitated, glancing nervously at Alyssa. That match selective exclusion. The phrase detonated silently. Naomi took the tablet with a steady hand. Thank you, Lena. Speak freely. Lena nodded, fighting the tremor in her voice. I also checked the meeting logs. Mrs. Ward has repeatedly removed minority-led proposals from the agenda before they reached review. The men shifted in their seats. Mark muttered, Oh, God! Alyssa went pale. That's a lie. She is lying. But Lena didn't back down. Something in Naomi's calm gave her spine steel. I have timestamps, she said. And email trails. And I saw what happened when Ms. Carter offered her hand. Her eyes flicked to Alyssa. You didn't refuse a handshake. You rejected a person. The room fell into a stunned, uneasy silence. Naomi looked at Lena not with pity, not with triumph, just with the recognition of someone who knew exactly what courage cost at that age. You did the right thing, Naomi said quietly. Lena's breath shuddered, but she stood taller. Alyssa, shaking now, pointed at her. You're finished. Do you hear me? You're done here, Naomi turned her gaze sharp enough to slice through the air. No, she said. She's protected. Effective immediately. Then Naomi looked back at Brian, the oldest man in the room, the one who had laughed first. Tell me, she asked, did you also think I didn't belong? Brian swallowed hard. I was wallowing Alyssa's lead, and that Naomi replied, is exactly how cultures rot from the silence of those who know better. The words hung heavy. Truths always do. Naomi set the tablet on the table. Phase 3 begins when I say so, she said, turning toward the glass wall. Everyone felt the shift. The reckoning wasn't coming. It had already started. Alyssa's breath turned sharp, almost metallic, like she was inhaling panic. Her palms pressed flat on the table knuckles, whitening. I will not be humiliated in my own conference room, she spat. Naomi didn't even turn. That's the second assumption you've made today, she said quietly. The room bristled. Alyssa stepped forward, desperate now, the heels of her shoes clicking too fast, too loud. You think freezing our accounts makes you untouchable? You think this makes you powerful? Naomi closed her eyes slow, as if centering herself against a familiar sting. A sting she had learned to live with long before billion-dollar signatures. And then it hit her. A memory. FLAS HBACK, age 27. A round table full of investors. A freshly pressed suit she bought with her first commission. A handshake she extended with pride, and a man who recoiled wiped his palm on his slacks and muttered, not you. Send the real representative. The shame had choked her throat for hours. The fury had filled her lungs for years. And the lesson power means nothing unless you use it when it matters had carved itself into her bones. Naomi opened her eyes. This conference room. This woman. This insult. It was the same knife delivered in a more expensive package. She turned back to Alyssa. You're not being humiliated, Naomi said. You're being revealed. Alyssa faltered. For a second, she looked like she might crumble. But arrogance is a stubborn mask. She put it back on fast. You don't get to talk to me like that, Alyssa snapped, stepping closer. You walked into my space. Naomi raised a hand not to silence her, but to correct her. This space, she said, was acquired by Carter Global Holdings 11 months ago. Mark choked on his own breath. Daniel blinked hard. Brian whispered, Oh my God, but Alyssa refused to accept reality. She lunged for the tablet Lena had placed on the table. I'm checking this myself, she barked. Lena instinctively reached to stop her. Miss Ward, please don't. Alyssa shoved Lena's hand away. Not hard, but hard enough. The room snapped. Mark stood up halfway uncertain. Daniel froze. Brian closed his eyes like he already knew this wouldn't end well. Naomi stepped forward. Not rushed. Not dramatic. But with the deadly calm of someone whose patience had limits carved in titanium. Don't touch her again, Naomi said, voice low, steady. Alyssa scoffed. Oh, please. She's an intern. She works for me. Naomi shook her head once. No, she said. She works for a company I own, and she deserves the dignity you never learned to give. Alyssa's jaw dropped. You're lecturing me on dignity, you, after hijacking our systems, after freezing assets. The men behind her whispered among themselves, anxiety rising like steam. Naomi exhaled softly. Your systems weren't hijacked. They were corrected. Your assets weren't frozen. They were reclaimed. Your division wasn't targeted. It was audited. She leaned forward just enough that Alyssa had to take a step back. And dignity, Naomi finished, isn't something you get to define. Silence swallowed the room whole. A deep, heavy, almost holy stillness. Then Naomi tapped her earpiece. Maya, prepare phase 3 and pull every incident file involving M's ward over the last 12 months. Alyssa's eyes widened like floodlights flicking on in a blackout. No, she whispered. You can't do that. Naomi's gaze didn't soften. I already have. And for the first time since the meeting began, Alyssa Ward realized the truth. She wasn't fighting a colleague. She was standing in front of a storm she had built with her own hands. The conference room felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were closing in around Alyssa. Her breath quickened. Her eyes darted from face to face, looking for an ally, any ally, but she found only the reflection of her own collapsing authority. Naomi stood in the center of the storm she hadn't created, but had every intention of ending. Maya's voice came through the earpiece again, crisp and controlled. Naomi, phase 3Q is ready. Transfer logs confirmed. Compliance team standing by. Alyssa shook her head violently. Compliance? Why is compliance involved? What did you tell them? Naomi didn't blink. I told them the truth. Brian swallowed hard. Mark shut his laptop like he couldn't bear to see another red banner. Alyssa stepped toward Naomi, voice trembling with fury and fear. You're overstepping your authority. Naomi's reply was quiet. Precise. Deadly. I haven't even begun. The men stiffened. Lena's breath hitched. And then the door opened again. This time, Morgan Hale, senior compliance officer, entered the room in a tailored navy suit, holding a tablet and wearing a look that suggested he'd been briefed fully and in detail. Alyssa's knees almost buckled. No, 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 no. Morgan, you're not supposed to. This is a closed meeting. Morgan didn't look at her. He looked at Naomi. Dr. Carter, he said with a respectful nod, we've begun reviewing the flagged incidents. Alyssa froze. Flagged. Plural. Morgan continued reading from his tablet. 14 internal complaints. 8 claims of selective exclusion. 3 documented cases of sabotaged proposals. 1 recorded incident of physical misconduct this morning. Lena took a small step back, tears pooling in her eyes, not from fear but relief. Someone finally saw her. Alyssa's voice cracked.
She pushed me.
She's? Lying, Naomi turned to Lena. Did you lie? Lena shook her head firm despite the trembling. No, Dr. Carter. I didn't. Naomi nodded once. Then we proceed. Alyssa staggered forward like someone trying to outrun her own shadow. You can't trust her. She's a child. She wants attention. Naomi cut in calm but sharp as a cut line. You dismissed her exactly the way you dismissed me. The words hit Alyssa harder than any accusation. Morgan stepped beside Naomi. We've locked down Ms. Ward's access pending formal review. All related files have been secured for legal processing. Legal, Alyssa whispered, lungs tightening. Legal for what Morgan didn't sugarcoat it. For discriminatory misconduct and abuse of position. Her world cracked. But I didn't know. Naomi's expression didn't soften. Intent doesn't erase impact, Alyssa. And ignorance, she paused, letting the silence sharpen the edge, is not a defense. It's an indictment. Alyssa's breathing turned shallow. I can fix this. Dr. Carter, please. I didn't realize if I had known who you were. Naomi stepped closer, not aggressive, not towering, just present. Unshakably present. And that, she said quietly, is the entire problem. The room stilled completely. You treat people based on status, not respect. You shake hands with power, not with humanity. Her gaze sliced through the air. You don't get to rewrite your behavior now that you know my title. Alyssa's legs faltered. Lena looked down, shoulders trembling with emotion she'd held in for months. Daniel exhaled slowly, finally understanding the true magnitude of the woman standing in the room with them. Naomi tapped her earpiece one more time. "Maya," she said, "initiate phase 3. Maya's voice came immediately firm, and final phase 3 executed. Alyssa felt it before anyone explained it. Her phone buzzed. Her badge vibrated. Her laptop logged out. She was being erased professionally, structurally, systemically by the very institution she once believed she controlled. Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't gloat. She simply watched the consequences arrive like a tide, justice delivered by quiet hands, and the storm Alyssa built finally reached her. The sound that filled the room next wasn't shouting, wasn't arguing, wasn't even breathing. It was the hollow, echoing quiet of a power structure collapsing in slow motion. Alyssa stared at her badge, now flashing red like it was a detonator she'd accidentally triggered. Her voice cracked in the stillness. "Dr. Carter, please, we can talk about this." I can explain." Naomi didn't look at her. She was reading Morgan's tablet now, scrolling through file after file, incident logs, ignored complaints, deleted proposals. Evidence layered over evidence. Morgan spoke softly, but the words were unforgiving. "Dr. Carter, these patterns aren't isolated. They form a clear systemic bias originating from Ward's division." Alyssa staggered backward as if the sentence itself had weight. "This is wrong," she whispered. "You're twisting everything." Naomi finally turned. "No," she said. "I'm showing everything you tried to twist." Daniel looked between the two women, throat tight. He had witnessed the dismissal, the mocking, the condescension, and now the reckoning for every unchecked moment. Alyssa's eyes burned with disbelief. "You think you can destroy my career because of a misunderstanding?" Naomi stepped closer, stopping just a foot away. Her voice dropped, soft, precise, lethal. "You didn't make a mistake, Alyssa. You made a pattern." The sentence rolled through the room like a seismic wave. Alyssa shook her head violently. "I didn't know who you were." Naomi didn't blink. "Exactly." Alyssa froze, mid-breath, mid-denial, mid-collapse. Because in that one word, Naomi had stripped away every excuse, every justification, every attempt to rewrite what had just unfolded. Naomi continued, voice quiet but unbreakable. "You treated me like I didn't belong because you thought I was beneath you. You erased proposals because you didn't value the people behind them. You shoved an intern because you knew she couldn't fight back. And you refused a handshake because you never learned to see dignity without a title attached." The room tightened around the truth. Naomi leaned in slightly, not threatening but devastatingly sure. "The real problem isn't that you didn't know who I was. The problem is that you thought you already did." The viral line. The moment people would replay again and again. Alyssa stood frozen in front of her as if the words had pinned her to the floor. Brian exhaled shakily, whispering under his breath, "Damn." Lena's hands trembled, not from fear, but from the vindication of hearing the truth spoken aloud, finally and powerfully. Morgan set his tablet down. "Dr. Carter, do you want me to proceed with formal suspension?" Alyssa gasped. No, please." Naomi held up a hand. "Not yet." The room stilled again. She looked around the table, every face, every shift of guilt, every ounce of silence that had enabled Alyssa's behavior for years. "This moment," Naomi said quietly, "isn't just about her." She let the truth settle like dust after an impact. "It's about every person who sat here and let it happen." Mark dropped his gaze. Brian swallowed hard. Daniel felt the weight of his own silence. Alyssa's voice cracked. "So what happens now?" Naomi closed the tablet with a soft click. Now she stepped back, centered, calm. "Now you face exactly what you built." Alyssa's knees nearly gave out, and the entire room knew the reveal wasn't over. The real consequences were only beginning. The conference room door swung open again, this time with force. Three members of the corporate ethics team stepped inside, each carrying a folder stamped with the gold insignia of Carter Global Holdings. Their presence alone redirected the oxygen in the room. Alyssa backed away instinctively. No, no, this can't be happening. Not like this. One of the ethics officers, Janet Rowe, a composed woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper sense of accountability, surveyed the room. Her gaze landed on Naomi first. Dr. Carter, she said with a respectful nod, we received the escalation. Documentation is complete. We're here to verify the final step. Alyssa nearly collapsed. Final step, she whispered. What final? Janet didn't look at her. She read from the folder.
Subject Alyssa Marie Ward.
Investigation, breach of ethics, discriminatory misconduct, suppression of internal reporting, obstruction of compliance review. Each charge landed like a hammer. Mark covered his mouth. Brian's head dropped into his hands. Daniel closed his eyes, guilt and relief at war behind his eyelids. Alyssa shook her head again and again. You can't do this. None of this is proven. This is her word against Janet. Cut her off. Ms. Ward, we have time-stamped logs from the internal server. Deleted entries. Altered review cycles. Meeting agendas modified without approval. Video evidence of physical misconduct. She paused. And corroborating witness statements from at least 4 employees. Lena's breath caught in her chest. 4. She wasn't alone after all. Alyssa spun toward the men behind her. You told them you betrayed me. Brian didn't lift his head. You betrayed yourself, he murmured. We just stopped covering for it. The words flattened her. Janet stepped toward Naomi. Dr. Carter, do you authorize immediate action? Naomi didn't answer right away. She looked at Lena, at the young woman trying so hard not to cry. Then at Daniel, who finally looked ready to stand for something instead of silently enduring it. Then at the men whose silence had allowed injustice to grow like mold in the walls. Finally, she spoke. Before we proceed, Naomi said, her voice steady, I want to make something clear. She stepped to the center of the room. This is not a firing. This is accountability. Alyssa blinked, eyes glossy with the realization that no appeal, no charm, no plea, no title could undo what she'd built. Naomi continued, for years, you silenced voices you didn't think mattered. You erased work you didn't value. You dismissed people because you believed power belonged only to you. She paused just long enough for the room to truly feel it. But power is not a crown. It's a responsibility, one you misused every single day. Alyssa's voice fractured. Please, I can change. I didn't mean to. Naomi looked directly at her. That excuse, she said softly, belongs to someone who made one mistake. You didn't make one. Alyssa let out a broken exhale. Naomi nodded to Janet. Proceed. Janet tapped her tablet. A single chime echoed through the room. Alyssa Ward, TERMINATED. Effective immediately. Access revoked. Legal review initiated. Alyssa's badge vibrated one last time, then died in her hand. Lena covered her mouth, emotions swelling. Daniel watched silently, learning what leadership actually looked like. Brian whispered, It's done. Mark stared at Naomi like she was justice made human. Naomi stepped back, composed. This room, she said quietly, will not operate on fear anymore. It will operate on respect. The words didn't rise. They didn't shout. They simply landed with the certainty of a verdict already sealed. And for the first time all morning, the room breathed again. The room exhaled as if a storm had finally passed, but Naomi knew better. Storms didn't just pass. They changed the landscape. Alyssa stood, frozen badge limp in her hand, her reflection trembling in the glossy conference table she once ruled. The men behind her avoided her eyes. Not out of cruelty, but because the truth was finally too loud to ignore. Janet closed her folder. Dr. Carter, The floor is yours." Naomi didn't move at first. She simply looked out the glass wall toward the skyline, the city shimmering under mid-morning light, unaware that a corporate empire had just shifted on its axis. Then she turned back to the room. "When I walked in, she began. I wasn't looking for a fight. I came here to finalize an investment that would have strengthened this division for years." Her gaze swept the table. But disrespect derailed that. Not disagreement. Not conflict. Disrespect. Daniel straightened, absorbing every word like a lesson no textbook could teach. Naomi continued her tone, calm, certain, unbending. "You all sit in positions where your decisions shape careers, shape futures, shape the culture beneath you. And culture," she paused, letting the weight settle, "is built in the small moments, the quiet choices. The way you treat the least powerful person in the room." Her eyes found Lena. Today, integrity came from an intern. Courage came from someone with no authority but a sense of what is right. Lena lowered her head, overwhelmed. Naomi looked back at the men. "To those who stayed silent, silence is safer, yes, but it is never neutral." Brian's shoulders sagged. Mark stared at the floor. Daniel inhaled like someone accepting a truth he'd avoided too long. Naomi stepped closer to the table. "I didn't raise my voice today," she said softly. "I didn't need to. Because real power doesn't yell. It moves. Quietly. Decisively." Alyssa closed her eyes, tears finally slipping past her defenses. Naomi turned toward Morgan and Janet. "Ensure the transition is clean. Reassign the team. Protect those who spoke up." Then she reached for the door. But before leaving, she looked back one last time. "Let this be the standard," she said. "Not the exception." The words vibrated through the room, gentle but heavy with meaning. She walked out into the hallway, heels silent against the polished floor, leaving behind a conference room forever changed. And as the door closed, Daniel whispered to no one in particular, she didn't just end a career. She rewrote the rules. Naomi didn't hear it. She didn't need to. The city outside already felt different. Word traveled fast, faster than security badges turning red, faster than finance screens, flashing LERT faster than the stunned whispers that leaked from the conference room into the hallway. By the time Naomi reached the elevator, the entire floor felt charged, like everyone sensed something monumental had happened even if they didn't know the details yet. Two junior analysts stepped aside instantly when they saw her, their expressions wide with a mix of awe and confusion. One of them whispered, "Is that her?" The other replied in a hushed breath, "Dude, that is Dr. Carter." Naomi didn't slow. Her calm presence alone parted the quiet like a tide. Across the hall, a cluster of employees pretended to scroll on their phones while actually refreshing the internal portal. Every refresh showed the same thing, a leadership change. Immediate. Irreversible. A supervisor muttered under his breath. She shut down an entire division in under an hour. Another whispered no. She corrected it. Meanwhile, deep inside IT operations, screens flickered with cascading notifications. A CCESSREMOVEDPERMISSION, SAISETLEEAST, ATAEASEIT, USTERIA, DIU teach specialist leaned back from his monitor stunned. "What the hell happened up there?" his colleague replied, accountability. Finally, Naomi reached the elevator just as Lena hurried up behind her, clutching a folder. "Dr. Carter, wait." Naomi turned, softening at the sight of the young intern, breathless eyes bright with something between gratitude and disbelief. I wanted to say thank you," Lena said quietly. "No one ever stood up for us like that. Not at this level." Naomi placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You stood up first," she said. "I just made sure it counted." Lena blinked fast to keep tears from falling. Will we be okay?" Naomi nodded. "You're gonna be more than okay. You're going to help rebuild what comes next?" The elevator chimed. Before stepping in, Naomi added, "And Lena, never let anyone teach you to be small." The doors slid shut, leaving the young intern standing there a little stronger, a little taller, and knowing she had just witnessed something rare power used right. By the time Naomi reached the top executive floor, the air was different, denser, quieter, the kind of silence that only follows after something irreversible has occurred. Inside the glass-lined corridor, senior partners were already huddled in urgent conversation. Their usually casual, confident postures were replaced with stiff, uneasy lines. Someone had clearly told them what happened downstairs. The moment Naomi stepped into view, the discussions died mid-sentence. Elias Grant, the longest-serving partner and a man who rarely looked rattled, straightened his suit jacket as she neared. "Dr. Carter," he said cautiously, "we've been updated." Naomi's expression stayed neutral. "I'm sure you have." Another partner, Meredith Shaw, chimed in. Quickly, "We didn't realize the situation in Alyssa's division had gotten so." Naomi cut her a look. "Not hostile. Just honest. You didn't realize because you didn't look." The partners exchanged uncomfortable glances. Naomi continued walking, forcing them to follow her into the executive boardroom. The room automatically brightened, recognizing her badge as the commanding authority. Screens lit up instantly with system-wide updates. Division reset initiated leadership under review ethics compliance active. Meredith swallowed hard. "You acted fast." "I acted appropriately," Naomi corrected. Elias exhaled through his nose. "Some are calling the move extreme." Naomi faced him fully. Extreme was what she did. What she normalized. What you let slide by, naming it personality instead of pattern. He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. Naomi tapped the table and the screen shifted to an audit timeline. Missed reports, filtered proposals, favoritism charts, demographic breakdowns. The patterns were undeniable. "These aren't numbers," Naomi said quietly. "These are people, careers, voices. All erased because one leader believed power meant choosing who mattered." Silence filled the room. Then Naomi issued the order none of them expected, but all of them needed to hear. Effective immediately, she said every division will undergo a full ethics audit. Quarterly. Mandatory. Transparent. Meredith blinked. "That will shake the entire company." Naomi nodded. "Good. It should." She stepped away from the screen. This wasn't a disciplinary action. This was a warning shot. A culture left unchecked rots from the top. And rot spreads fast. The partners said nothing. Not out of fear, but because they knew she was right. Naomi picked up her tablet. "I'm rebuilding this place," she said softly. Not around comfort, but around clarity. And for the first time, the senior partners understood this wasn't the end of the storm. It was the beginning of a new climate. Naomi stepped onto the rooftop terrace, the only place in the building where the city felt close enough to touch. Wind brushed past her suit, cool and steady, carrying the hum of a skyline that never stopped moving. Below her, an entire corporation was shifting. Realigning. Resetting. Not because she destroyed anything, but because she refused to leave injustice standing. Her phone buzzed once. A message from Maya: transition complete. Division stabilized. Staff relieved. Lena assigned to mentorship program. Naomi smiled, small, real. A door opened behind her. Daniel emerged, hesitant but determined. "Dr. Carter, I just wanted to say I'm going to do better. Starting now." Naomi turned to him. "Then start by remembering this," she said. "Power isn't proven by who you outrank. It's proven by who you protect." Daniel nodded, the lesson settling into him like truth he should have known years ago. The wind shifted again, sunlight catching the edge of the glass tower. Naomi looked out at the horizon, a quiet figure, unwavering, unshaken. She didn't need applause. Didn't need to announce what she'd done. Justice had a sound of its own. A silence that spoke louder than any confrontation. And as the city pulsed beneath her, Naomi whispered to the wind, a promise more than a declaration: "I don't raise my voice. I raise the standard." The day moved forward. and the world followed.